Am I audible? Yeah. Okay, fine. A very good afternoon, morning, evening to one and all present here. This is the sixth session for the Youth Cup. We have a great lineup of speakers. We'll be mostly discussing about the experiences. Our speakers, Mr. Rituraj and Miss Ayadi, have had at COP and SBs in the past. They have been uh, regularly being updated on these domains of climate change, frequency processes, and the thematics that they have pursued. IADI mostly focuses on gender, nature, and biodiversity, while Ruturaj sir has always pushed indigenous communities and voices from grassroots to such global level platforms like COP and SB that we were mentioning. Um, I'll probably give a small introduction of Ayadi first, and then we can have like maybe a discussion with also Rituraj sir simultaneously, about their experiences, how they went into COP, their experiences in terms of what they were expecting and how did the expectations were met at COP and or SBs for that matter, and also ask some questions as to how youth can potentially represent themselves at COP, or how can they engage with potential negotiators, how can they engage in different thematic areas, because COP in itself is very vast because of so many thematics that are taking place at simultaneously at different pavilions, different like negotiation rooms and other stuff. So we'll just kind of demystify the whole processes that is kind of getting so much hyped about across the globe, especially among the youth communities. And we have two amazing speakers once again. Thank you so much, Ayadi and Ruturaj, for joining in. Um, so Ayadi comes with a background in architecture. She is currently studying her master's, pursuing her master's and dissertation at IIT Bombay. She is also the chair for What GP, has been a member of IYCN. Now she's at LCOI alongside me. We are representing the nature and biodiversity voices, and how we can kind of bring these aspects much more on the front, because nature and biodiversity for some reasons have always been in the backseat and we never kind of discussed it. We have Ruturaj sir. He's a climate reality leader. He also comes with a lot of tons of experience. He has always pushed indigenous communities and represented the communities from the grassroots at COP and such global platforms. He has been part of various bodies, organizations like IUCN, Climate Reality Project, among others. So I'll probably start off with Ayadi asking, how can youth, the first and the most hyped out question, like how can youth go to COP or SBs and be a part of this conferences?
Okay, do you want me to answer? Okay. So again, thank you so much for having me here. I'm really delighted to be a part of this. And again, really happy to have met you guys in Elcoy in person. That was a delight. Again, to be part of COPs and SBs, it would be important to first of all, for example, go to the websites, try to understand what this whole conference is all about. Because as Achintya said, it's not as important to be part of these negotiations and conferences as much it is to understand the background behind it. To be a part, what you basically need is a badge which allows you to go into these negotiation rooms. And these badges could be, as we said in the LCOI session as well, that these are of different colors, denoting what you represent and again denoting sort of your space in the conferences. So these badges can be given to you from your country. This could be party badges, could be as an observer, where you can be part of different civil societies, and again different NGOs, etc. So there are different ways of attending SBs and COP. It's just you need to again put in your work and work with an organization or an entity that has access to these accreditations. I hope that answered the question, Cynthia.
Yeah, definitely, definitely. I completely agree with what you said. It's not just going to COP and uh, moving around the conference is much more of the on-ground action, how you represent the voices, the communities, from your hometown or countries that you represent up there, and also take forward the voices who are not able to be a voice for the voiceless. In short, that is what I feel. And now coming to Ruturaj sir, we have always seen the indigenous communities like left out of this whole conversation. It's always been like these spaces have always been kind of reserved to some extent for people from the global north, and all the high level people who only engage in negotiations and talk jargons and on the policies and stuff. So how do you think grassroots level people, indigenous communities who are at the forefront of getting affected by the major climate disasters or emergency, how can they put up their stories, put up their issues at such platforms and conferences so that they have a solution at hand? So yes, sir. Yeah.
That's a great question, Achintya. Can you hear me? Okay, perfect. Right. So it's a great pleasure to be here with you for the final session. And thank you to Youth for COP and the Climate Reality CAN International, CAN South Asia, and all the other organizations. My own Indigenous Peoples Climate Justice Forum is also a part of this. Let me start by quickly, in reference to your question, by quickly sharing experience I had at COP26, which was the first COP where 28 indigenous communities representatives were actually made a part of the negotiation process, right? They were actually invited to be sitting at the negotiation tables and contribute, and so that was quite a big beginning, and that was COP26. So it took like 25 years for that to happen, right? The second thing I noticed was that indigenous communities from around the world, whether it's from the remote parts of Amazonia or Mesoamericas or Indonesia or Africa, were present there in their, wearing the with traditional dresses, with the traditional music, with the support of the youth from all over the world, highlighting what they are facing back home at the grassroots. But despite having maybe about 700 indigenous communities in India, we had very few representatives. I don't remember even one at COP26. So that set me, thinking like why we do not have, despite having such a big indigenous people's population, and why why the representatives of the youth are so less from our region, from South Asia. One thing I noticed was that almost all the indigenous communities from South America and Africa and other places were speaking one of the other colonial languages of Portuguese or French or Spanish or English. Whereas I think that may be a barrier because many of the indigenous communities in India are very not having proper access to education maybe, and not very conversant with English, and of course other languages are not much prevalent here. So that could be one of the reasons. And the other thing I think is a lack of capacity building. We know we had a very good uh, representative of the UN Secretary General in Archana Soreng, who was a youth advisory member to the UN Secretary General. And I met her a couple of times at the COP, so she was a very good representative. But then we always say that the issues of indigenous people are as different as we are different from each other ourselves. Like all of us, 700 people, everybody speaks in different languages. We have our own food habits, own cultures, and all traditions, and own challenges and responses to the anomalies that we feel that we face in everyday lives. The weather anomalies which help build resistance towards the changing climate. So all these means that we need to have uh, many more representatives from Northeast, from North, from South, from Central India, from every region, so that we are properly represented as South Asia in the global negotiation. And my final thing is that one of the most key issues, uh, water, which is also related to biodiversity, cultures, and food security, health, all of it, is supposed to be the most important issue for our region in South Asia. The world's most populous countries are here, right? China, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan. We share the same water resources. And the Himalayas are one of the most threatened, most calamity-prone region in the world. But unfortunately, we do not have the spotlight in the global negotiations as much as we should have. I mean, this should be the priority. This is where people are losing their lives every day. So, as youth representatives, I think this should be the focus area that indigenous people of the Himalayan region, of mainland India, of the South Asian region, whose destinies are tied to each other, needs to be represented by the next generation of youth leaders. Thank you.
Definitely, sir. I guess we have always struggled, taking youth, I mean, indigenous and youth communities and youth voices at such platforms. And due to this, I guess we always struggle with them, with the adaptation and mitigation for these communities because they are the the ones who are facing directly and are at the forefront of these challenges. And coming back to Ayadi once again, over the time, I guess it's prevalent for both indigenous communities as well as youth. Over the time we have got an access. Previously it was kind of very exclusive and closed door conferences that used to happen, but now that people have started coming up and we have started getting a little bit inclusive to some extent, and now youth do have access to attend such conferences. But I do understand again, we are at the last in priority while speaking at the plenary halls. So children and youth are given the least priority. So how do you take in that? What is your comments or views, and how can youth be at the forefront of such conferences, raise their voices and be a much more inclusive in terms of not just a part of tokenism, but actual youth representation, actual seat on the table, actual voices getting heard by these negotiators or party leaders. So what's your take on that, Ayadi?
Again, a very heavy and very loaded question. I'm not sure if I can answer it fully, but what comes to me first from all these discussions we have been having the last few days is that we talk a lot about capacity building, we talk a lot about awareness, but we fail to talk about the eventual actions that are to take place. Again, as I said, like in the conferences, etc., wherever we are, wherever we're trying to raise our voice, there are different ways of raising it. There are again different coalitions you can join, you can work together. The whole point of this movement is that we're not alone. And I think that's what I always tell young people that no matter how small what you do, don't feel like you're alone. Because this is the time when we say it's young people. Although we're heterogeneous, we're also huge. Sorry, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, okay. Although we're heterogeneous, again, if we're coming from different spaces, we have a huge wealth of knowledge, and this can be operationalized better. That comes with collectivism, that comes with what we call the youth movement. And then again, there are informed ways of doing it. So that's where I understand that capacity building is important. So sessions like, honestly, sessions like these, where you get to know how exactly to engage, not only on a political level, but again, in your own community, in the international spaces, because activism or advocacy, whatever you want to call it, all of these things need to happen not only on the grassroots but also at the national level. And I think this is where I understand that capacity building is important. The wealth of knowledge and what we want to do truly becomes important here. And I think that's all I had to say for this.
Okay, I guess we got most of it. I am sorry because of the technical issues that we are facing, but yeah, what I guess Ayadi was trying to mention about, how youth can engage in much more informed activism and build their capacity and knowledge base rather than just going to these conferences for the sake of attending and having a representation instead of actually doing on ground grassroots level actions and taking the youth voices from your home countries or communities back there. Coming to again Ruturaj sir, I feel that we have a very similar question for the indigenous communities as well. I feel like they are just brought in here for ticking that box that we have inclusive participation, and we have made this conference inclusive by just bringing some few people from indigenous communities. And I also wanted to understand, I mean, do we really get their voices up on such platforms, or it's just for a formality that we are doing? And if it is so, how we can improve the whole process, how we can have actual representation, actual voices, and actual concerns that they have put up at such platforms, and then kind of act on it and build more resilience, adaptation, mitigation, and all these thematics and sub thematics that we can maybe discuss.
Okay, let us quickly first look at the facts of how inclusive these COPs are actually. There were 30,000, around 30,000 participants in Glasgow, COP26, which grew to about 70,000 in Sharm el Sheikh, COP27, and over 100,000 in Dubai, COP28, right? Now, firstly, the people who are directly involved in the negotiations are the people who represent the government, the people having the party badges, right? And then we have the media and we have observers who usually have access to almost all the negotiation rooms. But one thing that we saw in the last few times is that we have a lot of party overflow badges. So party overflow is they're officially not negotiators, but they are people who go along with the party representatives. And many of them, I think, are lobbyists. People from different fossil fuel lobbyists and different industries who are there. Uh, and they take up a lot of space as well. So sometimes it may not be inclusive. Getting to the COP itself, it's so overwhelming. There are like so many things happening side by side. Within the blue zone itself, we have the actual meeting rooms where the negotiations take place. Then we have the plenaries, which are basically open to a large number of people, including observers and media. And then uh, we have all the pavilions and stalls where things are happening. But it is not important to be actually uh, the meeting rooms to make an influence. And just a quick example: in COP27, there was a widespread rumor that some countries were negotiating the uh, possibility of dropping 1.5-degree target, right? And the civil society movement so many things happened and actually never so it did not actually happen. uh, Coming to how we can make ourselves relevant, I think we need to network. That's the most important thing. There are so many constituents. The younger people are always looking out for organizing these panels, and then all the side rooms, the pavilions, um, all the stalls, all of them have different events. So when you go as a youth representative, I think it's very important that you network with your peers across the world and find a place, choose a topic, what you want to attend, and make sure the media also gets to know that. Uh, so that is the way of going and multiplying that your impact. And there is a there's a lot of distraction, and there's so many announcements, especially in the beginning days, about so many things about there'll be methane plants, there'll be deforestation. I don't know how much of it has been followed up, because I'm skeptical, because every year we hear about these new announcements, but I don't see much follow up. So it is very, very important that we stick to what we want, stick to our own agenda. Um, One of the great areas to follow the actual negotiations is the briefings by Climate Action Network. And of course, you have to be a member of that of CAN to be attending that. But South Asia CANSA also has a briefing every morning. I don't know if it's going to continue. I think it is. So where every morning they kind of, they have a debriefing session on what happened yesterday and what to expect the next day. So these are, ways of, all the India and South Asia group are here in Kansa briefing. So that is maybe one way of going forward on, doing something and not just be attending with a badge and just roaming around. It's very, very easy to get lost in that big venue. Yeah, so that's about it from me.
Yeah, definitely, sir. I could, relate to so many points that you were mentioning, especially like, it's so much overwhelming, like for even for people who have been in the space, people going for the first COP or SBs, especially COP, wherein, it's so many people at a single place, and there are 100 different things that are going on. And if we are not prepared and do not have a very structured agenda as to which thematic or where I want to be on XYZ date or XYZ time, it's really difficult to navigate ourselves through this kind of a mess. Not really a mess, but like it's so complex and it's so interconnected that you feel like being everywhere, but at the same time you need to also understand that practically it's not possible, and you need to have a very kind of a very streamlined agenda that okay, I want to follow these tracks or these negotiations. Um, Also coming to like the complexity and how we can more kind of prepare, and also taking through the experiences. I would like to request both of you to maybe talk about your experiences. Ayadi, I guess you were there at SBs and COP recently, and you had a great experience. And being at Yango, I guess you did have access to like what Ruturaj sir was mentioning. There are briefings that happen by different organizations. So like similar to what can there's Yango, that is the civil society organization, and it is a kind of a recognized youth secretariat that we have created, and which also have debriefs every day, and there are different thematics, so you can always join to understand and kind of have a summary of what happened yesterday, follow negotiations for the next day to better understand and also help fix your own agenda, and these are quite these support systems that you have at such conferences. So maybe Adi, if you could take us through some glances, of some pictures that you might have from your COP and SB's journey. And we were on the same boat, I guess, kind of figuring out where we want to be, and navigating ourselves through this whole complex COP. Yeah, over to you.
Thank you, Cynthia. I'm sharing my screen now. Let me know when it's visible. Can you? Okay. Okay. Again, thank you so much for giving me this space. These are just a few images of COP28, which, as you might know, was the largest COP yet, and probably the largest COP there would ever be. We'll start with basically the opening intervention. So, in the very first day, as Achintya said before, all the constituencies get this space to again give their opening intervention. I again had the privilege of delivering the intervention with one of my colleagues and friends from Yango, which was again Mohammed Utsura from Palestine. And this was again just setting the agenda for COP28, giving our opening interventions after the Women and Gender constituency as Yango. We would be representing children and youth NGOs. This was the very start of it, where again young people as well as again women gender as well, all of us just stand behind our delegates and again show support for the statement. It's something we always do, and it just fills us with excitement and again enthusiasm for the next 2 weeks to come. Then one of the coolest parts of COP28 that I was able to attend was the People's Plenary, which again is where indigenous people, again local activists and again advocates come to this space and are open about their experiences. This time we had one of my friends, Roa from South Sudan, who was able to present her experiences and again just rile us up with all the emotions, work together as civil societies. Again, as Rituraj sir said, that this is the IPs and LCs, the local governments, young people, all of them coming together, negotiators as well. I mean, it's all of us together. This was one of the experiences I had where, again, going away from strict negotiations to emotions and people and happenings in the real world. Some of the things that we were able to do was, because it's the UN mandated space, we were able to conduct actions which were again authorized and taken permission from the UN. This is one example of the end of the fossil fuels. You can see all of us over there. This is again a lot of different organizations coming together, youth NGOs, NGOs in general, civil societies together. And it's just us showing solidarity for what we believe in. There were different kinds of actions. This was just one of them. And finally, as Abdullah was mentioning, the largest negotiations happen in the plenary space. These are just the plenary negotiations where, again, just the negotiators were starting to come in. We were sitting right behind FAO, so this is that picture. And here we were again discussing on all the larger thematics, so deciding on the agenda, what is going to happen, and then again, everybody was making the statements. And this is also where the image from the opening intervention that I showed, things like that happen in the plenary negotiations. So these are the largest rooms. And again, every negotiation here, there's a mandated space for the recognized bodies, and anybody else can sit on the chairs behind. That's where observers usually are sitting. This is how it goes. And finally, because I was following nature and biodiversity, which isn't a direct thematic or a negotiation item in the UNFCCC, this is an image from the NAPS. So they were discussing about the adaptation plans, the national adaptation plans, and this is it's just a one way where nature is incorporated in terms of, for example, nature-based solutions. So I mean, it's not ideal for nature and biodiversity, but we find different ways to get incorporated in the climate space because again, it's intersectional, and we have our own conventions as well. This is one of those images where again you see a lot of note taking. You see everybody just giving their statements, and again keeping track of those, understanding what every country is saying, how do we conduct those bilaterals, etc., was our job as youth delegates. Again, because I was representing IYCN and as a part of Youngo, this was again us taking notes collectively, understanding what the processes are, and building the capacity of anybody who is not involved here. So not just young people, but also the CSOs, etc., that we are involved with to understand the proceedings. But again, with negotiations came a lot of waiting. So this is an image from like 1:30 a.m. Yeah, 1:30 in the night, where we were waiting for the final negotiations to start. This was the final day when we got to know that, okay, we'll have one more day of negotiations. It's just all of us sitting there waiting for things to happen on our laptops, on our notes, just trying to coordinate. And this is something that comes part and parcel of working as CSOs, because sometimes if, as it does, has said, that if you don't have a party badge or an overflow badge, or if you're not allowed to go inside a negotiation room, you would inevitably be sitting outside and waiting and trying to see what comes out of that of that discussion. And again, this was the final action that we had. This is also something that was allowed for because of being a UN mandated space. That even though we were in a country which would not allow for free protests or even peaceful actions, because of being in a UN space, we were able to get the permission for the action. But in this picture, I'm trying to show in the very last day when there was nothing, there was no progress, no concrete progress that was happening. All the young people stood there in a line so that the negotiators would pass through us, looking at us, just to show the solidarity that we all shared from all these different countries. Again, to say that we are here, we're watching you, please give us some report, because we were tired at that point of again participating in negotiations, in bilaterals, in formal meetings, informal discussions, and again with the different countries that were again focusing on all our demands together, the LDCs, SIDS, AOSIS, etc. This was again one of the ways to show our solidarity. And I think somebody already asked this question about how exactly to do it. This is one of the ways. Everybody just came together, we took the permission, and then we started this, and anybody could join. It wasn't just young people, as you see in the picture. Again, as Achintya was mentioning about Youngo's actions, this is one of the things that we started doing with the YCC, was again having those consultations directly with negotiators and with young people to build their capacity so that they can also ask questions directly to the negotiators. The picture in question over here is of the nature and adaptation session, where again we were exchanging ideas, where young people got the chance to not only give their views as direct inputs, but also ask questions from proper negotiators who were in that space, who had the experience and who were about to give their demands from and represent their countries as well. So this was one of the ways. And again, other than spokes, other than daily briefing and debriefing on the start of the day and end of the day, as a constituency, we're also invited along with, I think you see Lucy from here from the Women and Gender constituency. There's also the IPs and LCs that are sitting right beside. So every constituency also gets to be involved in either the protocol meetings, informal consultations. So this was an informal consultation. We were invited by the high-level climate champions, and this was another way of us putting our inputs. So again, the whole idea was to corroborate a list of all the youth demands and present it to them because of the, as Achintya said, voices that were not there as well. And again, finally, there would be things other than the negotiations. There are very cool side events. This space that I'm representing right now over here is the Women and Gender pavilions. We'll have pavilions that are for countries, for again, different constituencies, and just places where you can not only meet people, but also share, understand their views, understand where they're coming from, and again, gather more insights about what you can do and maybe about what is happening in the world other than that. On the right side is the pavilion of Germany. The reason I added this image is because there's a lot of chaos at COP, but there's also places to rest. And that's, I think, something we should be mindful of, that you have to take it a little bit calmer. You have to think of which thematics you want to follow, and also you have to understand that there's only so much you could do. So that's why, again, coalitions are important, but also taking care of your own health and mental health is important. And to end it on a lighter note, in every sort of an event or side event, most of them have free food. This was one of the ways that as young people we were coping with COP, where again, everything was very expensive, because the reality of this is that we still lack the access as young people. And as again, coming from a country which is not the first world, or again, not from the Western Hemisphere, it's also really hard to, again, gel and cooperate with different people. But that is also a reality we should be um, aware of. But in general, COP is a space where you can engage in different ways, and I hope this gave you a little more insight. I think the final presentation, the final slide is again the space for exhibitions. This was the booth that we got for IYCN along with three other organizations, and this was the Zero Waste Hub. You can see Achintya and Ankit here. They were both again one of the hosts for this exhibition. And this is another way where you can present not only your work but also your organization, and another way of meeting, collaborating, etc. Yeah, and finally the green zone, where again, if you don't have a badge, it's another way of engaging, where you have, again, some of the pictures showing there are sessions, there are again exhibits, you can roam around. These are open for everyone. So on the question of being able to go to COP, even if you're not involved in negotiations, there is so much more you can do from outside. I think that's it. Thank you so much for the time, and I hope this was useful.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it kind of reminded me back of like the Dubai days and COP and the struggle that we kind of underwent, kind of figuring out the whole space, especially when you are youth and understanding the negotiations and how the whole process works, because it looks very simple and very flat, very easy to access and everything on paper, and when you are back at home accessing it from your computer. But when you land on the ground, it's the reality is so much different, and it's such a big space. You kind of take time to soak in all the information, knowledge, and you also mentioned, kind of taking the time to kind of ease out the whole process, because it's so much intense and overwhelming at times that people have gotten
Achintya,
it's
your
so.
voice is not clear.
Uh, is it clear now?
Yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
please
Sorry.
continue.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay, yeah, I was just telling that it's very important to also kind of relax and soak it in. I mean, take your time, because it's so much to take in and grasp at a one at such a short span of time, because it's just 14 days. You're present at so many negotiations, following so many thematic areas, interacting with so many people. It's just so much at times, and overwhelming at times, that you need to kind of ease out, take it at one step at a time, and also relax. And spaces like where there are pavilions which offer interactive and kind of games. There's a lot of stuff that you can actually do. Now coming to Rituraj sir, you have been to COP26, and over the years you have tried to represent not just the indigenous communities, but also focused on bringing justice bringing justice to these communities. So I just wanted to also, kind of invite you and want you to share your experiences, how the whole process was for you, like, coming from, I mean, starting from COP26, how did you kind of bring those voices and then also ensure that they have meaningful engagement, justice, the justice for these communities, the indigenous communities, because I believe that you are the founder, you have your organization called the Indigenous Peoples Climate Justice Forum. So you also focus on justice being served to these communities. So how has it been for you, and how was the road, and how was the process for you like?
Okay, I think I will start with the kind of engagements, the variety of engagements that I was able to have during the COPs. Uh, Maybe start with COP26. I was one of the voice of the original people during at the Nature Pavilion during COP26, where indigenous people from around the world were able to provided a space to actually share their world vision and the challenges and the responses. At COP26, I think it was one of the best COPs ever because Climate Reality Europe had organized this venues across the city of Glasgow where we could go to this, pop-up climate cafes where we had these discussions, presentations, and then there was a dedicated space uh, away from the main venues where Climate Reality was hosting their own talks. And as a group, climate leaders from around the Europe were there, so we were marching together in the protests, and it was basically the atmosphere was very electric. Uh, that time I was also a European Climate Pact ambassador, so we had our own backroom debriefings about the steps or the step forwards and the reasons for certain decisions that Europe was taking as a community. So that was quite interesting because on the one hand, while we are worried about phasing out of fossil fuels uh, and you know net zero, Europe was basically as a community they were more worried about uh, being uh, you know buying time because of the impending wars and having time to be fully dependent, fully self-reliant on their own renewable energy sources. Uh, we also had very good opportunity to interact with uh, uh, institutions in Glasgow. So I had two events. One was at the University of Glasgow, and then one was at the Glasgow Calvin College, which was, I was a co-panelist with uh, uh, a lot of well-known scientists and like Catherine Hayhoe and all, and it was really interesting. The media was also following us those days, so the BBC and Guardian, I had interviews in this too. But the most memorable part for me from COP26 was the People's Plenary. It is, like Ayadi was saying, it's a great a venue for indigenous people, local communities, the youth, women, and representatives from all the 9 UN constituencies to be there. But what happened at the end of the People's Plenary was mind blowing. Everybody, all 10,000 observers, walked out holding a red ribbon which stretched all around, and it we kind of surrounded the entire blue zone, holding that red ribbon, and that was a very very dramatic protest. I think it made a lot of impact as well. Because the negotiations were extended for a couple of days after that, and we had a lot of positive outcomes after that. Uh, then at COP27, I was a speaker in events that was organized by Earth Day and Youngo actually, and also Women Business Coalition, which was very, very interesting. Uh, we also had this mm, India group there. So we used to kind of decide where to go. The India Pavilion was also very active. We had a lot of speakers from India. Uh, the protests again are always a good place to also network with like-minded people, with youth, with indigenous people, with women activists. Then at COP28, which was really the biggest and at ever, like I was saying, there will not be a COP as big, I guess. I was a speaker for the UNESCO Pavilion, and then we had the CCI consultations, high-level consultations on food, uh, and then I had a very, very effective interview on we don't have time.org, which was which provided an opportunity to talk about indigenous people and local communities of South Asia as a whole. And besides that, in COP26, I thought I must share this because Green Zone also provides a lot of opportunity. In COP26, I had a Green Zone exhibit where we use the stall to actually highlight what is happening in the Himalayas, how people are responding, and how lives have been lost, and how why it is unfortunately not the center of global climate negotiations. So when you are heading to COP, once the website opens up the green zone space, maybe you could tie up with somebody to also organize your own stalls. That's a good way to get people to know what you are doing, about your passion, and just uh, make an impact. The media also covers the green zone a lot, and the good thing about the green zone is you don't need a badge to be there. So a lot of local people, a lot of people who go there without a blue zone badge are there in the green zone. So you can also do a lot of things in the green zone. Uh, there are various events organized by Extreme. These are talks and music kind of events which are very popular. Uh, these are known as Extreme Hangouts. They can be also very, very impactful. Yeah, I think that's these are the things that I am involved with. So yeah, that's about it.
Thank you so much, sir. I'll probably take in some questions, maybe for a refresher. We have some pretty amazing questions. Probably I'll start with you, sir. So there's Sripa Pandey who has asked about what is the most effective way of influencing domestic and national climate policy. Your take on that.
Well, I think one of the best ways to ensure that you are heard is to start writing, because we know that all the decision makers are reading the newspapers, the op-eds, especially, and that is one way, of making yourself heard. Uh, if you can get yourself to be nominated as a part of the, party delegation, or if you can organize events in prior to the COPs or during the COPs, to focus on and get the media to come and focus on the issues that you think are important for your region, for your people. uh, I think that would go a bit towards ensuring that you kind of influence the decision, or at least make them think about it. I would not say influence the decisions, because many times I think the decisions are already made, and despite protests, things that harm our environment, things that harm our climate, tends to get pushed through, unfortunately. That's not true for the entire world, actually. So yeah, but we can always try our best, and I always believe that things can only get better. So yeah, keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you. Ayadi, there's a question for you, I guess, quite a tricky question. So there's again, Shripa asked, like, how do youth delegates devise or come to a consensus about their agenda?
Oh, interesting question. I think might be a selfish answer, but one of the best ways would be to try and attend ELCOI, at least the pre-consultations, or just getting involved in the general national climate scene. So, for context, I was not aware of what the rest of India or what the rest of young people were up to till I ever attended an ELCOI 2 years ago. And that helped me and a lot of people to understand what is the geopolitical climate or socioeconomic climate of these negotiations like, because it's important to get out of your own bubble, try to understand other people's perspectives, and also combine that with lived realities. So again, like I'm practicing rural technology and education now, but there's people who we still cannot reach, and to devise anything that you can call represents young people, whatever region they are from. So we have these different consultations that go on not only online but also in person. That has been one of the initiatives that ELCO has taken this year to make it a little more inclusive. We also have children who can also finally get a way of engaging in these processes. But again, the way to go about it would be to find out what is it in your local community that you could do, how exactly you get involved, not only in your local spirit, but also how that combines within the national movements. And I know that IYCN has a lot of chapters. They also work quite extensively all over India. That would be one way to be involved. There's Triple F, the Fridays for Future movement. There are different movements that you can join. But again, these are the more, I would say, the more famous ones. But there would be a lot more that your local community would be focused on. As simple as, for example, in Mumbai, for saving the Array Forest, we had the community that was involved. Again, the Mothers for Nature that were involved. So these are, again, smaller parts where you can get involved in terms of understanding what people need and what young people need. While if you want to get involved in the proper, again, agenda setting or submitting of these forms, etc., the best way, again, as a young person would be to be involved in Youngo, which is, again, it's free to engage in the UNFWC process in any ways. It's again a free space for you to enter. There's no hierarchy, it's a flat structure. There's a Google form that you can fill in and join the mailing list, and that's how you can basically be part of the constituency and again discover or basically explore how exactly you want to engage. Because as Rituraj has said, it's not just direct policy inputs that you can give. You can also again work through the media. You can work through your action. You can work in different ways. Does that answer, Achintya? Okay.
Yep, yep. Probably taking another question. So there's Kurat ul Ain who asks, I have a question about as a new learner, how can I participate in COP? I'm a PhD student in Italy and uh, uh, I mean, focusing on sustainable finance. It's open for Ayadi and Ruturaj sir to answer. Like, feel free to take it up.
Well, I think if you can get to Baku, Azerbaijan, or the future venues of COP, there are ways to engage. Firstly, the green zone is open. You can always, like I was saying earlier, you can always register for some event. Or if you can find some organization to give you a badge, then it becomes easier to go and uh, present your credentials to some of the organizations that you may know, or even organizations you may not know, but you know that they are focusing on sustainable finance, for example, in your case, and present yourself as a possible speaker, as a panelist. So it is quite possible, but the thing is, you should be able to get there somehow. Uh, the second is, of course, in preparation, you could contact organizations who are dealing with sustainable finance and coordinate on how you could be a part of the COP. So being there is important. I think in the case of SBs in the past, when I attended, it was although as a delegate, I attended virtually. So in the COPs, I don't know if it is as it may be possible for certain sessions, but I don't know if it is as fulfilling as it is to be actually there.
Yeah, and I think just to add, because the sir mentioned before about the different constituencies, the 9 constituencies, there's also Ringo, which is for researchers. So I saw that you are a PhD student. That has been one of my conflicts of interest as well. Do I want to be in academia? Do I engage through academia? Or are there different avenues as well? So maybe that is also one thing to look at, that you can also, again, it's not just the women and gender constituencies, Yango, Ringo, but also you can join any other constituencies that you feel represents your views or what you want to represent.
Yeah, I'll also just quickly maybe show us some pictures of the badge and how the whole COI, RCOI, and LCOI structure looks like. Just give me 1 second, maybe. Okay, yeah. I hope my screen is visible. Yeah. Okay. The topmost. So there's the COP that happens, the UNFCCC COP. So this year it's supposed to happen at in Baku, Azerbaijan, and so preceding the COP, there is this thing called Global COI, which is the Conference of the Youth. So it is the biggest youth conference in under the UNFCCC framework, and it is majorly hosted by the Yango and of course also the local youth organizations come together and kind of in a joint manner host the global COI. And then there's under it there's the RCOI and the LCOI. RCOI are the regional conference of the youth. It happens in a regional level. So there's uh, Asia Pacific. There's MENA. There's North America, South America, and all these different RCOIs. This year for Asia Pacific, it's happening in Sri Lanka in September. And for LCOI, it's a national level conference. Again, it's the local conference of the youth, but the it happens at the national level, and it is hosted by the again youth organizations who are working with the youth on climate and other intersectional issues at a national level. And this year, I mean, I along with Ayadi are at LCOI India, and a lot of others from the Youth for COP program have also been engaged in the LCOI here in Mysore in India. And yeah, so this is a short brief of how youth can engage specifically if they are not able to go up to conferences like COP or LCOI. You can always start from the national, then move up to the regional level, and of course global COI, and finally the COP and SPs, which are kind of the peak. Also, to give you a brief again, I guess this was something that we had covered in the very initial sessions of how the badge systems work. So there are different types of badges. Usually, the NGOs comes under the observer status, so they have the access to the blue zone, wherein we can look at negotiations, engage with a lot of negotiators, set up bilaterals, follow different thematics, move across pavilions and all these stuff. There's the party overflow that Rituraj sir was mentioning. It is usually people from government and different government entities from the country, that come on party overflow. And also then there's the red badge that is for the party head. So for India, it is usually Mr. Bhupender Yadav, who is the Minister for Environment, Forest, and Climate Change. And there's always the Secretary badge, which is this year going to be the COP29 presidency. So there are different kinds of badges. Then there's press, media, intergovernmental. So there's a lot of badges that are released, but usually youth NGOs comes under observer status. So yeah, short. I mean, I took a long time to explain, but yeah, that was a gist of what they were kind of trying to explain. So I hope that answers the question. Um, Coming back to the questions, I guess we had. Um, Okay, so there is Tajdeep Kaur who asks, could you please take us through how a particular negotiation session of COP happens, briefly from beginning to the end, and how people get to speak, who presents the policy recommendations, and so on?
Well, it's the UN Secretariat, which UNFCCC Secretariat and the Presidency who work together to finalize the negotiation process. The meeting rooms are allotted, and the respective party uh, delegates are present there along with their associates, to each one presenting their own country's viewpoints on the particular subject. And and then that is followed by, if there is usually what happens is there's a policy recommendation or a paper in the background which is presented, and then the negotiators come and present their own objections or additions or usually it's the change in text. People are not happy with the text. They want changes in text. So it's the mostly the party representatives, basically the country representatives, who are doing this give and take negotiations in presence of observers, in presence of media. But what actually happens is that many of the negotiations take place behind the scenes, and what they come up with is only the something that is left for last minute negotiations. But as an observer, all you can do is perhaps if there is time, if there is opportunity, you can add your viewpoints in the actual negotiation room. So I'm talking about the meeting rooms. But as we spoke earlier, there are many other opportunities outside of the actual negotiation rooms, actual meetings, to provide your viewpoints. Uh, so yeah, that's it. I think if anybody else wants to add, please go ahead.
Ayadi, do you have any additional points?
No, I think you pretty much described it. But as you rightly mentioned, that the actual negotiating that I've seen, at least participated in, happens outside the negotiation room where you're trying to catch the negotiators and trying to again set up those bilaterals, try to again lobby. So that is a very important part that happens either in the break. So because as you mentioned that the parties themselves get time first, then you have times for constituencies, and that's how the hierarchy goes on. But there's breaks in the middle, there's again time to discuss and time to properly lobby and again put your own position and trying to see if you can build that stronger lobby so you can push for a negotiation item, so you can push for these agendas and finally see that semblance of change. So there's a lot of cooperation, collaboration that takes place and that happens between the proper and actual negotiations, as we term it.
Probably one last question that I want to take, Ayadi, I guess is more indicating towards you. So Anjali asks if someone wants to work in the intersection of sustainable living and how to be mentally healthy, which being sustainable, and what are the avenues are there for them?
So sustainable living and mental health as venues to advocate for is what I'm gathering from here. Again, one of the ways, because we've been talking about young people quite a lot, there are different thematics under each constituency. So, for example, Youngo has a health working group. They work extensively not only on physical but also mental health, and they can look at these different intersections. But there's also channels in every constituency to work not only within these working groups, for example, nature and health work together, we have health and water working together. So there's ways in which once you enter that youth space, you can actually work on these different intersections because again, we do understand that we come from different realities. We might be wearing a lot of hats. The same goes on in every representation. And again, the way to go ahead is to find out. I think the first step was to find out which thematics you want to be engaged in. Even for, I wouldn't know as much about the health thematic for negotiations in general, but there are again ways in which, for example, the WHO has their own youth board. They have their own SDG group as well under the major group for children and youth. There's also more ways in which health has been represented again because of the first ever health day. They have again gotten a lot more traction, and we're hoping for much more, not only for health but also for nature. I think these are what come to me on top of my head, other than joining NGOs, dedicated spaces in your own locality and in the UN.
I'll probably request both Ayadi and Ruturaj sir to, kind of your message to all the youth, how they can meaningfully engage at such conferences, potentially represent their communities from back home, their countries. How they can, there are a lot of people in our cohort who belong to indigenous communities. They have never been to such conferences. Uh, how they can bring their community voices at such platforms and leverage those opportunities. Your message and your guidance to them. Ruturaj, sir, we start from you.
Well, first of all, I think we already have several organizations who are collaborating here for that specific purpose. And I think everyone could personally reach out to our climate reality project, India and South Asia, to Can, South Asia. Uh, and we have so many people who are involved, so many people who have the expertise in different fields, who can guide you, handhold you. So that is possibly the good way of going. And if you go to for the indigenous, I saw a question down there as well. For the indigenous people, if you go and search, there are indigenous peoples groups who are dealing with environmental rights, with climate justice around the world. It could be easily a part of the network. We have a caucus of indigenous peoples organizations at the UNFCCC. We have all these groups in LinkedIn, um, in different forums, other social media as well. So Twitter as well. So you can be part of that. You can join one of those groups. But the starting point will definitely be, I guess, in the Climate Reality Project, India and South Asia, and CAN South Asia.
Ayadi, maybe your comments or your advice to the youth, especially at a time when we are looking at COP29 and next year COP30, which is going to be focusing on youth, and now at the peak of all the LCOIs and RCOIs happening across the globe, and youth engagement on the rise. What's your message for the youth, and how again they can meaningfully engage, be the voice for the voiceless, the people who cannot maybe go and attend COP or SBs in person, how they can engage, meaningfully contribute to this space.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you, Cynthia. I think I would like to start with the very first step would be to recognize the power of our own voices. There's a lot of young people who have that access now. There's a lot of people who do have the privilege of not only attending those spaces, but also raising their voices, whoever it might be, for your community, for somebody else. But to recognize the power of your voice, that each individual really, really does count. Do not think about, okay, my one action, how does that even matter? Think about what are the repercussions, even as small as, again, we talk about individual action in our daily lives, and then these also reflect in what we do in those negotiations, what we do for our community. And that would be the one thing that I would want young people or anybody honestly listening to take forward, that do recognize the power in your voice. And again, final, just what we have been talking about constantly was to join a movement, because although individual action is powerful, it's better to join a community coalition, whatever it might be, whatever you're comfortable with, because you can do so much more when you're together. Just breaking down those walls, coming out of your own life and understanding each other's perspectives is just so important to advocate for anything. Because one thing we've realized that climate change is honestly a huge market problem. That's the reason we have not been able to solve it, even with all the solutions that exist. We really need to come together to again stop all solutions from being there. Because, as you said, the reality of Baku again is it's again a fossil fuel state. And we are not optimistic about this even being a finance COP with all these numbers that have been flown out about the amount of money we need. Again, looking at nature, the only thing we deem worthy for nature and biodiversity is the carbon it can sequester or the oxygen it produces. And we need more voices. Nature is voiceless. It needs your representation. I think that's what would be the very start of this, to join again these spaces that can conduce and again involve that thought process. Just try to learn more. Be open to again learning and unlearning. And I think again, as Rituraj and everybody has been saying again and again, that spaces like these are just so important to just have that thought process kickstart. So I'm really, really thankful again. And thank you, Achintya.
I just can I add to Ayadi?
Yes, yes, sure, sir.
Yeah. I like what you said, but I thought one more thing that we should go in. When the youth representatives go to this COP, uh, you, obviously everybody will go with questions, right? You are hoping to find questions to different answers, but remember, you are, those of you who are here in India and the rest of South Asia, you all of you are all seeing climate change happening. You are probably all connected to victims if you are not yourself a victim. So you will be looked for answers. You'll have a lot of people from Europe and Americas, from the developing countries, who have no idea of the ground realities, and they will be looking to you for answers. So while going to answer, look for answers, also be prepared that you have the grassroots knowledge. You know about what is happening around you. You know the responses. You know the resilience of your people, and you go there as a voice of your people and provide the answers to the people who do not know. Thank you.
Definitely, sir. But also request Dr. Sakshi to come in and any thoughts or any comments. We had a very power-packed session with both Ayadi and Rituraj sir sharing their experiences at COP and how both youth, indigenous communities, and all the underrepresented groups can potentially be a voice for the voiceless, represent their communities back home. Your take on it?
No, I would just thank both of you, Rituraj sir and Ayadi, for giving your time and sharing your experiences, and most importantly, uncovering all the ground reality with our participants, like what are the real situation they should know. So, thank you for sharing all the informations, and I'm sure our participants would take a lead on that and develop the insights for this, like their new journey in the climate space. So, Achint, over to you. Make some announcement, then we will wrap up the session.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
sure. So this is, as all of you know, participants, this is the sixth and the final session that we are having. But we are also looking forward to engage all of you once again in some time. We'll be giving a case study based assignment, which would be evaluated for the selection into the subsequent rounds. This was the phase one. We will be going on to the semi-final round, which is phase two. We'll have in-person sessions, which are going to be hands-on immersive learnings. We are going to do mock cop in person. So do kind of take part in the assignments. Submit your assignments on time. A lot of the assignments have already been closed. We understand there were some of our Bangladeshi friends who couldn't, kind of submit their assignments on time due to the situation there. But we do understand that, and we are, individually taking those requests into consideration. For the others, feel free to again, mail us with any questions or queries that you might have. We are also you will have time till 30th of August to submit all of your assignments. Even the case study based assignment would be shared with you by latest by Tuesday. So yes, I guess that's mostly it. Dr. Sakshi, anything that I'm missing probably?
Yeah, yeah. Just the last date for the assignment submission would be 30th of August. So all the participants would have to submit their assignments before that. And uh, because the all assignments till session 5 are already under review with the external jury member. So be punctual or submit your assignments on time.
I would also like to request all of the participants to utilize all the toolkits that were shared. A lot of efforts and kind of thought time was kind of put behind those toolkits. We had a great team behind putting together those toolkits and information and resources. So those are a wonderful source of information. All that I was sharing today has been already shared with you in via that toolkit. So do use it to your maximum potential. Use it to its maximum potential while kind of doing the assignments or doing the case study that we are going to give you guys. I also want to take the time to thank all of our partners, starting from CANSA, the Secretariat, IYCN, Climate Reality, other partners like Center for Youth. We have Dr. Ruturaj sir, who has always helped us, encouraged us throughout, and all of the partners, who have showed constant support in the entire process for Youth for COP. I look forward to engaging once again with all of you in a very interesting session. It's a kind of a surprise at the moment, but we'll definitely release the surprise with along with the assignment. So sorry for that. It comes with both a sad news and a bad news that you will have to give the assignment in a short deadline, but also you will have a very interesting session and a youth who has been into this space actually take you through a crucial topic of how to engage really at COP, and also what the program is entailed about, and we'll also be having that as the closing session of the Youth for COP program. Thank you once again for joining in, and I look forward to uh, you know you guys moving on to the second round and potentially engaging in further knowledge building, capacity building sessions. Thank you once again, and thank you all of the partners. Thank you, Ayadi and Rituraj sir, for taking out the time. Have a good day and have a good weekend ahead. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye bye.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.